Well, welcome everyone for our June NAUA service. Our speaker today is Odell Havsdotter. Odell is from Winnipeg and was a worship team member for the First UU Church of Winnipeg, often leading services there before leaving that congregation. Today's talk will be focused on the fourth principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Those of us who have come to the NAUA believe that this core principle of enlightenment has moved humanity forward and is central to our Unitarian faith. We look forward to hearing Odell on this topic. It's so important to us. And now for the chalice lighting. We light this chalice candle, so symbolic of what light represents to us, the light that guides our path in the darkness, the beacon from a lighthouse that safely guides ships to port, and the enlightenment that led humanity out of the dark ages. With this in mind, we'll light a candle for the service. And now we'll hear from Catherine Lamar on her opening words.
We are Unitarian Universalists. Welcome to this place. This is a home where no revealed truths are promoted and no scripture or human being is accepted as infallible. This is a place for searching for truth. But we are believers. We believe in intellectual freedom. We believe in justice. We believe in compassion and concern for each other and the whole world. We believe in commitment to those ideals which make us caring and active in the struggles for human dignity. We are Unitarian Universalists. And now I'll give you over to Odell.
Hello. Our reading for today is called Devotion to Humanity by Michael Werner. For all the talk about reason and science, humanism is really about a passionate love affair. It is a love affair with life, not a mythical hereafter. Humanism is a love affair with a progressive vision of civilization in which each of us can add to our growing library of wisdom, our evolving knowledge of what there is and what is truly important. None of the great achievements in history would have been possible without a love of the adventure of learning and the adventure of creating a better life. Our great cultural achievements in science, art, music, literature, philosophy, history, psychology, and political thought all inform each other and have been born of that long humanist tradition. Humanism is a devotion to humanity and the biosphere that humanity is part of. It is our passionate commitment to the best ideals that are supported by what experience, science, and civilization have taught us. Humanism is larger than any of us. We have a duty to humanism's evolving tradition, which has inspired countless individuals to make the world better. At the same time, it motivates us to fill our lives with transcendent purpose for a meaningful, exuberant existence that makes life worth living. And now it's time, I guess, for our hymn, our first hymn.
Okay. Feel free to sing along, but make sure that you are muted.
Strife of truth with falsehood, for the it, and 'tis prosperous to be just. Though the cause of evil prosper, yet his truth alone is strong. Though its portion be the scaffold, and upon the throne be wrong, then it is the brave one chooses, while the coward stands aside, till the multitude make virtue of the faith they have denied.
Okay, I'm back. Welcome here, everyone. I originally gave this talk to my home congregation, First UU of Winnipeg, in January of 2022. It was one of the last services I attended there. Reaction was generally positive. No one said to me that they disagreed with what I said. And yet the congregation had accepted without criticism the agenda of the white supremacy movement in the larger faith community, and specifically the UUA. There is a large proportion of this congregation who are atheists, and also many who left more creed-based denominations, who should have been able to identify the irrational ideas that were being presented and enforced by our minister and several influential members of the congregation. Here's what I told them. Starting in 1981 and culminating in 1985, our continental faith community wrote, debated, edited, and finally passed the first 6 of our principles. The 4th principle was included in this statement and reads, "A free and responsible search for truth and meaning." I believe the people involved in this process who arrived at this wording did a great job of being very precise. This principle is one of the main reasons I knew this was a place I belonged back when I started attending here in 2015 or so. Today, we will be taking the statement apart to examine the meaning of each of the ideas included. In our time afterwards, we'll spend some time talking about your relationship to this principle and what you think it means. First, I'd like to take a moment to think about what it means that we have principles. Most other faiths have a dogma or creed. People choose to attend a particular church or be part of a faith community because they generally agree with the creed of that community. Sometimes there are 1 or 2 things they have issues with, but mostly all are in agreement about what their community believes. Having principles instead of a creed means that we accept that we may each believe different things about the meta questions. We don't agree about whether there are supernatural components in the world, or that there is only the material world to interact with. We don't agree on one text that we can refer to for guidance other than our principles and sources. We don't have authority figures who tell us what to believe. What we try to do is to refer to our principles for guidelines about how to behave. They inform how we interact with each other, the wider community, and even the non-human life we share the planet with. We refer to our sources to inform our attempts to live our principles. We value diversity and learning from each other, especially when we share different views and backgrounds. So the way I'd like to approach this is to first talk about what is meant by truth and meaning, and then look at what it means to talk about a free search for truth and meaning, and then what it means to talk about a responsible search for truth and meaning. I think of truth as having 2 different important distinctions. There is little t truth, which is my truth. It's my experience, things I've read, movies I've seen, things my family has experienced. There is also capital T truth. I think of this as facts. Some are just cut and dried, no question truths, capital T truths, like math, 2 + 2 = 4. We can't really debate that without undercutting important things like engineering, computer science, and astronomy. Or think of it this way, we can maybe debate about who or what was at fault in a car accident, but we can't debate that it happened. An example of capital T truth that affects me is that my mom died on November 5th, 2020. She's dead, and that's the date she died. She had COVID-19, and the truth is that the reason she is dead is because of that. Some people might say that she had underlying conditions which contributed to her death, and that is true. However, she wasn't dying actively before she got sick, and the disease is why she died right then. An example of small t truth from my perspective is that I believe there are real things that would be seen as supernatural. I believe the material world as we are able to describe it scientifically right now is not all there is. I think that someday we might be able to perceive more of it scientifically. But for now, spiritual beings who don't have corporeal bodies are not perceived as real by some. That's an example of something that I believe, but I don't claim that everyone should believe it. Meaning to me means purpose and reasons, the why, if you will. I don't think there is the same sense of meaning as there is to truth. Meaning is by definition individual. My previous life experiences give meaning to the current situations I find myself in and the choices I make. While there may be some aspects of communal achievements like going to the moon or passing the Civil Rights Act in the US, the meaning I draw from it would be very different from the meaning my neighbor would find. So in thinking about the search for truth and meaning, we need to understand that while we're all on our own path, we share a commitment to capital T truths. I think this is in part why one of our UU sources is humanist teachings, which counsel us to heed the guidance of reason and the results of science, and warn us against idolatries of the mind and spirit. It is very important to me that we acknowledge this as one of our official sources because we don't all agree on a creed. Of course, to many of us, there are areas of life that science and reason can't really address adequately. But where they apply, we should listen to the guidance of reason and the results of science. If we were to start denying reason and science as valid checks on idolatries of the mind and spirit, I think we can really sometimes fall down a rabbit hole. Just a brief side tangent. I think we need to think about what is meant by idolatries of the mind and spirit for a moment. To me, when I think of idolatry, that means elevating something to be more important or true than it is. Like when the Israelites built the golden calf to worship instead of God. A few modern examples could be how people consider success or money to be the most important thing and use it as a way to rank other people. Idolatry of the spirit is a little harder for me to pin down, but to me it sounds like something that pollutes my spirit and leads me away from the truth. An example of this could be false claims of racism as entertainment, which means I don't have to do the hard work of getting along with different people or growing in some other way. I think this movement can sometimes blind people so much that they stop seeing the real problems we could be working on. Freedom to me is the ability to move or act in accordance with what you believe to be true. In this context, it means to act without constraints in terms of what you choose to believe about the big questions in the world. While peer pressure and a culture of rigid conformity are not directly interfering with this freedom, I think many people would find it very difficult to express contrary views in that environment. There are certainly times when I have experienced that response to contrary views I or others have held. We can do better to make this a community that truly values each other's freedom to find truth and meaning on our own path. One example is that at times it can be very uncomfortable here to assert a belief in a deity. Due to the experiences some of us have had or our perspectives on the world, we feel this is a place where we can disparage believers in gods and have a chuckle with like-minded people. But that can have a very chilling effect on those who do believe in a deity. Allowing others the freedom to come to conclusions that are very different from the conclusions I have come to can be really difficult. After all, I have examined other beliefs and determined I have the right one. Letting someone believe something that seems wrong to me can be a challenge. Pretending it isn't a challenge doesn't help us get to the place of accepting each other's beliefs. Sometimes I have chosen not to have difficult discussions because it's easier to just walk away. But in order to build our beloved community, we have to be willing to work through these differences with love for each other. So what does it mean to have a free search for truth and meaning? In this context, to me, let's see, sorry. Okay. In this context, to me, freedom here is referring to being unfettered by peer pressure. We shouldn't be censured or removed from this fellowship for pursuing our search for truth and meaning. As long as our goal is finding truth and meaning, we should be free in this community. We might seek input from valued friends here who can inform our search. And as a community, we have some responsibility, I think, to let people know when we are concerned they are veering from what can be considered truth and meaning. But we should not react by shaming someone because we disagree or have an emotional reaction to the path they are on. We don't have to endorse or walk with someone on a search for truth or meaning that doesn't work for us or feels wrong. But we are each free here to search and find our own path towards the important ideas that matter to us. Responsible means having good judgment and the ability to act correctly and make decisions on your own. In other words, it means to take into account the effects of your actions and make decisions in a way that shows accountability. You can't yell fire in a movie theater because that affects other people in a bad way and could cause serious harm to people as they run to escape. It's also not responsible to claim a lie is true and do everything you can to get people to believe it. Some lies are more harmful than others, like, for example, claiming that an election was stolen is much more damaging to society than claiming that the earth is flat. But neither of these is a responsible statement to claim. To have a responsible search for truth and meaning is to take into account the sources of ideas we think have merit. We should examine the motivation of the people we converse with to see if we are being misled. We must examine our hearts to see if we have underlying motivations that are interfering with our search for truth and meaning. We can be guided by our search by using many of the sources that we affirm as Unitarian Universalists, as well as other religious or secular books or other media. But we should be aware that Facebook and other online sources can be manipulated to show one side of an issue as overwhelmingly supported, while leaving out a lot of contrary evidence. Experts in a given field can make mistakes, but we should trust statements from someone who has studied a topic for years, more than someone with an agenda online or on social media. One topic we have to discuss before we leave this idea of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning is the ways our brains interfere with this goal. For the past several years, I've been very interested in this topic. A lot of research has been done, especially in the past 20 years or so, about how we think and make decisions. Many of you might have heard that we humans are not good at making decisions based on abstract ideas. We are much better at dealing with problems we can see and touch. But climate change is really hard to get people committed to fixing because the problem seems so far off. A lot of our beliefs and decisions are subconscious and unexamined by our conscious mind. We absorb beliefs and patterns of thinking from our family and the culture we grew up in, and we assume those beliefs and patterns of thinking are correct because we never challenge them. It turns out that adults are still much more concerned about peer pressure than I ever thought we would be when I was growing up. There is much less quicksand than I expected, but way more peer pressure. I think we tend to focus on the peer pressure that is applied to teens and young adults to make decisions that won't work out for them as well in the long run, like trying drugs, smoking, underage drinking, etc. I was surprised to learn that peer pressure doesn't go away when you get older, it just changes. I think I've referenced some of the ways I have experienced that here above. I just want to remind people to consider from time to time whether you are willing to go against the group, to stand up for what you believe, even if people will react negatively. The 7 principles, but particularly the 4th principle, are so important as a foundation on which this community was built. It's really important to keep them so we can maintain freedom and wisdom in our thoughts, without which we cannot build a thriving church and society. And on that happy note, it's time for music.
Okay, this is one of my favorite hymns coming up. I'll just tell you a little story. I first heard about it when it was before the gray hymnal, before that was published, there was a draft version. And in the draft version, the words to the second verse of this hymn started out, "From what flat wastes of cosmic slime." So this was the cosmic slime hymn. I always liked it. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy it. Sing along, but mute your microphone. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. This is the quiet music.
And now we'll hear closing words from Catherine.
Okay, I'm surprised they didn't know they were coming up so fast. These closing words were written by M. Scott Peck, and they don't have a title, but they're extremely relevant to what Odell said. The truth is that our finest moments are most likely to occur when we are feeling deeply uncomfortable, unhappy, or unfulfilled. For it is only in such moments, propelled by our discomfort, that we are likely to step out of our ruts and start searching for different ways or truer answers.
As I was saying, this is one of my favorite hymns. Like a lot of UU hymns, it combines a Christian tune with some UU words. And let's see, I have some, there we go. Okay, the words were written by Donald Robert Perry Marquis, American humorist, journalist, and author. He's best remembered for creating the cartoon characters Archie the Cockroach and Mehitabel the Alley Cat. So this fierce unrest celebrates the life force that is never still, whether it is the weeds that grow through the cracks in the sidewalks or the astronauts walking on the moon. Life is never content. So sing along, but mute yourself. Here we go.
Oh, fierce unrest seized at the core of all existing things. It was the eager wish to soar that gave the gods their wings.
So even though we put out this candle to close our service, we will never extinguish the search for illumination on our journey. We travel together along this path of enlightenment. Now, for upcoming events, on June 18th, 4 p.m., we have the Tuesday Circle Group will meet via Zoom. On Saturday the 22nd at 10 o'clock, this is Pacific time, by the way, the International Study Group will meet to discuss the Enlightenment's role in Unitarianism. On June 27th at 10 a.m., there's a monthly Ministers Support meeting. On June 27th at 5 p.m., there's a book club. The discussion is on the 21 Skills of Spiritual Intelligence by Cindy Wigglesworth. Now, everybody should know that the summit in Spokane is October 17th to the 20th, and it'll be both in person and on Zoom.